always tried to anticipate. In Goldfinger, gold shortly thereafter became a great big international problem. The valuation of gold and so forth and so on, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, the biological warfare. We always seemed to be a beat ahead of things, and we had to build them up and make them. Look, Diamonds Are Forever was about smuggling diamonds in golf balls into Las Vegas. For what? To sell in a jewelry store. Now, by the time you got around to Diamonds Are Forever, they expected enormous things of the pictures, and so we created the business of the diamonds being smuggled in order to create an enormous satellite studded with diamonds, because you know the first laser beam was projected through a diamond and not a ruby in England years ago, and that was why the diamonds are being smuggled. And of course, Cubby came up with a great idea that the villain should be impersonating Howard Hughes. That was Cubby's idea, I must say. We broke our heads for about a year before we got anywhere with the story, until Cubby had a dream about it one night. And it was his idea. I give him full credit for it. It was a wonderful idea. And because if Howard Hughes, nobody saw him anyway, so who would know he was gone, you see?
Exactly.
And of course, then the business of the villain Blofeld had a voice box which imitated his voice, which also has become a thing that you can do with voice prints and voice imitation and so forth and so on. Many of the things that we thought up have become actual things. And so, as I say, the books had to be augmented in every way. And, of course, now the big thing about who made them funny. Terence says he made them funny. What's his name? Sean says, I put the jokes in. Well, it's very funny. I love Sean dearly, but why isn't he funny in any of the other pictures?
Exactly.
You see, somehow the jokes aren't there. The lines aren't there. And Terence hasn't only made 3 of the pictures, and they continue to be funny, so somebody else is helping, and I'm too modest to say who.
Let's see. There was I talked to Peter Hunt, and Peter Hunt was involved at the beginning as well.
Peter Hunt was the editor on all 4 of them, and then I and others made a big pitch with Cubby and Harry to let him direct one, because we just love Peter. Peter, as I said in an article I wrote for either Esquire or Playboy, has an impeccable filmic sense. He's the world's greatest editor, and he turned out, I think, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, where he was lumbered with poor old George Lazenby, and did a marvelous job in spite of that. I think the last half of On Her Majesty's Secret Service is one of the greatest stretches of action adventure there's ever been in the history of moving pictures. And Peter, I think Peter's just great, and he can direct any picture that I'm concerned with any time.
Well, he was interesting. He had a music background, so he learned the meaning of music and all of the beats and things, which helped him in his editing. He said that that Dr. No was very long at first and wasn't moving properly, and he was ordered to speed the thing up, and that's one of the reasons it was so fast. I think there's
that's true.
Cut all the way along.
Well, there have been a couple times that the pictures, the first rough cuts, were pretty, I won't tell you who the director was, were pretty sad. And there were big fights, and I made myself unpopular by saying so, because I always say what I mean. There's no sense in not. And Peter and I disappeared into his cutting room, and we'd work on it together, even to the extent where I would write new lines to be lip-synced into the moving lips of people to make sense of what we were doing. Peter is just great, and I'm sorry he didn't direct any of the others. He almost came back to do Spy Who Loved Me, but he couldn't get away from.
He told me he
couldn't get away from Klinger
Carlo
cutting
Ponte,
that thing. That's right, Ponte. That's right. He couldn't. He's a marvelous man, Peter, and I think he's one of the best filmmakers that there are.
Well, I think that shows in the films he's edited.
Yes,
I mean, it's
just
tremendously so.
And he did second unit work as a director.
Oh, sure. On Dr. No, when you first, did you write here, or did you write in London? Or
I wrote in London.
You went over there to write in London?
I wrote them all.
You wrote them
over
all
in Europe,
in London,
yes.
so that involved...
Yes, I wrote Goldfinger here partly, but most of it in Goldfinger. I did the first draft script here, and then I went over there, and I rewrote it with Harry and Cubby, and then I left. The next thing I know, they had brought in a man named Paul Dane.
Yes.
A very, very good writer, whom I respect tremendously. But he wasn't quite his milieu. He did The Spy Who Came In From the Cold and Deadly Affair, which was marvelous. And he did Planet of the Apes, and he did many wonderful pictures afterward. At that time, he hadn't done anything. One thing he had done, a small picture which had won an award in England called Orders to Kill or something like that. Anyway, he worked on it, but when the revised script was given to Sean Connery, he refused to do it. And so Sean was here, and Cubby came here, and I came back on the picture, and then I took over and rewrote my own revision in England, and that was the story of Goldfinger. And
what had he done to the film? Did he just slowed it down?
Paul, I don't know. It didn't quite work at certain lines. Somebody asked Bond, "What are you going to do now, James?" And he says, "I think I'll scream." I'm being mean, but as a matter of fact, I think I can say this. There's a thing there from certificate from the Mystery Writers of America. They named Goldfinger one of the best of the films in 19, whenever it was, and Paul didn't come. Instead, he sent a telegram to Rex Stout, who was the president, which he read, and he said, "Thank you for the certificate, but my share of the screenplay of Goldfinger, it was exactly .007, which I thought was very gracious of him.
Very. I think the best Bond film, from looking at the original novel and comparing it to the seriousness of the subject, was From Russia with Love. I think it had the... I think a lot of the critics agree also.
Yes, I think they do.
It doesn't have the humor and fun of the other ones. It's very serious. In fact, it has some humor, but it's not. It's a much more serious film.
It still has a frame of reference which is more realistic. They're actual people. You know, they hadn't yet become so larger than life and such caricatures. And it's my favorite of all the films too. And I had the amazing thing about that is that I wrote that thing in 6 weeks, and it just wrote itself. It was, it was a marvelous book.
It's his best book.
Yes, and in 6 weeks I wrote it, and then of course there's the usual pushing and shoving, and Terence, who fancies himself as a writer, also changed it a little bit and stuff like that. But that's my favorite, and I think that represents most what I think a James Bond film should be.
It was a general idea to get away from the Russians and make it a Spectre
show? Oh yes,
show?
No, that was we were told you have to do something about it because the Russians can't be the villains. Right. And we came up with the idea that Spectre, this is not in the book, that Spectre is the one that is playing the Russians against the English, you see, and vice versa. And it worked. I was perfectly willing to do that. It even made it more interesting, you see. And,
interestingly, Spectre's mentioned in Dr. No, and that also wasn't in the Dr. No book.
No.
Where did Spectre come from?
Well, Spectre is in the books. There's several.
That's right. Spectre's in Thunderball.
Society for the propagation of extortion, crime, terrorism, revenge, and something else.
Special Executor for Counter-Espionage, Terrorism, Revenge, and Extortion.
That's right.
But that was generally it didn't hurt the script at all by making it.
It helped it, as a matter of fact. And that it's interesting how things happen. The thing about the knives in Rosa Klebb's shoes, and in the end, when everything seems to be all settled, she suddenly appears as the chambermaid in the Venetian Hotel, and they have that fight where she kicks him with the shoes and all that kind of stuff, or tries to. And actually, Actually, I think she killed him or something like that. And
in the book, she stabs him, and the last line is he falls unconscious.
That's right. That's right. But anyway, it didn't work. Physically, it didn't work. And they were trying to get this business of how she could kick him, and it was very hard. He was holding a chair against her, pinned against the wall, and she was kicking at him, and it just didn't. And he was supposed to kick her foot in such a way that it turned it into kick herself. Oh. And they couldn't do it. And pardon me, they were hours at it. And finally, I said to Cubby, there had been a thing there where the girl had kind of hit Rosa Klebb's arm and knocked the revolver out of her hand, and that enabled him to pick up the chair and start to protect himself. And I said to Cubby, look, this is never going to work. Anyway, there's a gun on the floor there, and a way that the girl can prove that she's really on James Bond's side, because it was very kind of anomalous all the way through, why didn't you just pick up the gun and shoot her? He says, great. And that's what they did. And Terrence liked the idea, and eventually they did it that way. So you see how things happen. I just happened to be on the set. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't been. Also, that marvelous fight, one of the greatest fights ever staged in the pictures, in the small train sure. Between Grant and Bond. And we didn't. It went on and on. Terrence shot it for 3-4 days. It was great, and nobody knew how to end the fight. And in the middle of the night, I called up Cubby, and I said, Cubby, I've got it. I know exactly how to do it. I said, in the pre-title sequence, when the guy with the Bond mask on is stalking Shaw and vice versa, and Shaw appears behind the fellow with the mask, he pulls out this garrote from his wristwatch, and he puts it around his neck, and he strangles him. Now, Shaw should be wearing the same wristwatch in this scene, in the fight, and Bond should somehow strangle him with that same thing. And that was never in the script until they shot it.
In other words, the beginning sequence wasn't in there either?
Oh yes, the beginning sequence is in there. But I said that it's a kind of poetic justice that Shaw should be killed the same way that he kills this fellow with the James Bond mask in the first place.
Really?
You see, yeah, those are the way things happen in moving pictures.
The way he dies in the book is ridiculous. I mean, the way Bond survives in the book, putting the cigarette case next to his heart to glance off the book, was so silly.
Yeah.
I thought the idea of having I guess the books were entirely similar, except for the fact that there wasn't a tear gas cartridge in the briefcase in the book, and that's what gave you the moment of.
No, it was just something that a good writer thinks about that has a certain significance and is in a way, as I said, poetic justice, that a fellow's hoist by his own petard.
The movie has like 3 or 4 beginnings. It's interesting. Some movies start. This one has that pre-credit sequence, which is beautiful. That was the first Bond film to have that. Really, it's almost as if the teaser in Dr. No could have been right after the 2 operatives are killed, and they could have run the credits that way. Well, whose idea was it to come back and have a teaser before the credits? That's something very unique, I would think.
I think it was sort of being. No, there was a teaser in Dr. No, and that was the 3 blind beggars, and shooting the fellow, and then attacking Strangeway's cottage, and then going, and then you dissolved, and you were in England, and they were getting then they did the titles, and then you came to England and picked it up that the news of it was coming in and so forth, and they had to go find Bond. And so there was a pre-title sequence, and we decided that there would be one in From Russia with Love. Of course, the pre-title sequence that I liked by far the best was Goldfinger.
That's very interesting. That's the first sequence I think in any of the Bond films where it's very funny in the beginning. I mean, the idea of him coming up with a duck on his head was not really there before.
As an indication of one of the things. Paul Dane had a dead dog floating, and when I read that, I said, "Oh God, you can't have that, Cubby. Let it be a gull, a fat seagull." You see, so that's how that came. But all of that, and everybody, it's so weird. Everybody says, "What a marvelous directorial touch!" That as this assassin creeps up behind Bond when he's talking to the girl in her dressing room, that he sees him in her eyeballs. That's right in the script. I'll show it to you. I wrote it in there. It was a great directorial touch. So you never can tell who belongs to whom, you see.
From Russia with Love ends in the book right after the Grant is killed, and your film. Well, then of course Klebb comes back.
Well, we had the entire
boat, and then a helicopter.
No, the helicopter and then the boat.
Then helicopter, then
setting
the
boat. The ocean on fire.
Right.
And that was Terence's. He thought about that.
Terence was his idea.
Yeah, and it's absolutely impossible. But Terence and I had worked on another film called The Red Beret. And in that thing, Alan Ladd and his group are surrounded in a minefield and can't get out. And so then he gets the idea that if he takes a bazooka, he'll fire and skip bomb the projectile, and like ducks and drakes, it'll detonate the bombs in a lane, and then they all rush out that way. And that is absolutely impossible too. But the audience sees it, so it believes it, you see. And this was sort of the same kind of thing, which Terence and I had done in the earlier thing, except that this was an impossible thing that you believe if you see.
I enjoyed that sequence immensely. I liked the way the film made use of location too. I mean, the fact that there was, marvelous. I mean, you'd never. I mean, it
was really marvelous. The camera work in that. Ted Moore was just great, and I thought it was just wonderful. The backgrounds and the stuff, and poor old Pedro Almendarez, who got cancer during the thing, and then shot himself. He was simply marvelous. Just wonderful.
They had to rush through shooting to finish it.
Well, he could hardly work, poor fellow. And
his was a marvelous characterization. Yes, like you said, everybody was so vivid in that. Yeah. The helicopter sequence is like a Hitchcock. It's almost like out of North by Northwest.
It was out of it.
That was a theft. Was that your idea?
No, it was that was Cubby suggested it, and I resisted it. And on opening night in London, he sent me a cablegram that came the next morning that said, "For your amazement, audience applauded helicopter sequence last night."
Well, that is a good sequence. Another one of his brilliant lines too. One of their aircraft is missing, which is kind of interesting. But Goldfinger starts out kind of with that kind of joking approach. Was that
Well, I mean, by that time we knew that the audience loved the humorous aspects of the pictures, and so we tried to do those things which were ironic and amusing and so forth. And the whole thing about the assassin knocking him into the coming up behind Bond, and Bond knocking him into the tub, and Bond had taken off his revolver and holster and hung it up, and the guy reached for the gun and was about to shoot him, so he picked up the electric heater and threw it into the tub and electrocuted the guy in the tub, and then said "shocking" and walked out. Well, that was all mine.
Just perfect.
It was all mine, every bit of it. And that had nothing to do with there was nothing like that in the book. There was a guy that came up behind him that he killed, but not in the tub and with all that stuff.
The only thing that happens in the book that gives me an idea that it may have been the germ of it is that the book opens with Connery sitting in an airport, ready to go somewhere, and he's thinking about how disgusted he was with this last killing on a banana plantation or something.
Right.
And then you tie in the fact that there's drugs involved, and they blow up the tank and everything. And John Barry's music works so well in that opening sequence. With
wonderful. John is wonderful. I think that Hamlisch's score for Spy Who Loved Me is very, very good, but I still love the Barry movie.
It's just like it works so well with it, the way it pounded out everything.
He's a magnificent composer.
Did you like working with Terence? I mean, was he a...
Oh, yes. Yes. Terence is a wonderful guy. Terence is imaginative, and he's... I think he's terrifically talented, and if one says that it's the director who really sets the style of a thing, and then Terence is responsible for it. I'm sure of that. Did
he give to Sean the certain flair that he would need to play that role, and then he was like...
I don't think so. I think Sean is intelligent enough and so forth that it just came naturally to him. I think what Terence did for Sean was he dressed him up and he made him look like, my theory is that the great success of Sean Connery as James Bond is that he's an absolute miscasting. If we'd have gone according to what Ian Fleming wanted or described Bond, we'd have come up with David Niven as they had in that other one that was made. That's right. You see, because that is Fleming's concept of a James Bond. But here is Sean, who is a great big husky truck driver type who wanted to be a football player, who really drinks beer and not Dom Perignon champagne, who dresses tweedily and casually and stuff like that. In other words, he's exactly the opposite, the antithesis of a James Bond, who is supposed to be an English gentleman, while Sean is an Irishman, a Scotch Irishman, a tough guy. Now, the point is this, that it's like it was having him be or pretend to be all the things he really wasn't, which was the cream of the jest. In other words, every ordinary bloke sitting in that audience or his girlfriend could look up there and say, that's me, that's me. I could do that. I could be like that. I could. You see, he wasn't this special kind of Englishman that Fleming wanted. Fleming once said to me, so I really think that also added a dimension to it. It was like a takeoff on the character right from the start. You see, nobody was aware of this really, but I'm sure it played a part in it. Why he was accepted and why everybody loved him in the part, just because he wasn't that kind of an Englishman.
Sure, and that helped the films be different. I mean, they could have just been another espionage film. I think another thing is that at this time pictures were going outdoors more, and for this is right after Bridge on the River Kwai, the Ten Commandments went to the places, and then people like to see in different places.
Oh yes.
And the Bond films were kind of great for taking you on those.
Oh yes, they were marvelous at that. This last one, Spy Who Loved Me, is simply an amazing job from that standpoint of view. The places they go to, the Egyptian locales and the ones in Sardinia and so forth, just marvelous. Scotland, Baffin Bay, and that stunt at the beginning that started it was horrible,
Whose idea was that?
Oh, who knows?
I heard they had it on Honor Majesty Secret Service, but they couldn't get a guy at that time to do it.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No.
On Goldfinger, Guy Hamilton came in and
yes, he
directed.
did.
Now, everybody I've talked to seems to think that Guy didn't get along too well with everybody.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't say that?
No. Terrence is a charming charmer, and he loves everybody, and everybody loves him. And and Guy is a little sterner. I will say this for Guy: he's one of the most professional people I ever met in my life. He comes in on schedule. He's in on budget. He knows exactly what he wants, and he tolerates no nonsense at all. And when Sean wanted to go and play golf at 4:00 in the afternoon, they weren't finished yet. Guy would say, "I'm sorry, Sean, we're not finished." Terrence would knock off and go with him to play, you see. And I think that he's a most professional man, Guy. I enjoyed working with him. I had fun working with him. And I know that Guy and Sean didn't particularly get along. They're too different, But Guy was so reliable. Other directors, I won't mention them, they'd come in with a vague idea of what they wanted to do that day, and they'd fool around, and they'd set up by the time 5:00 came, and then he'd shoot it the next day or the next day. Guy Hamilton knows exactly what he wants to do when he comes in, and he does it. And I think he's a little perfunctory about the love stuff, but otherwise, I think he's just great. I think he works out his action sequences fantastically. I think Diamonds Are Forever are just fantastic with the action sequences. You see,
even Goldfinger. I think Goldfinger just works.
Yes.
Like like if you told me that the first four were directed by the same guy, I wouldn't have seen any difference. I don't think Guy did anything different to make this not as good. I think the first four are, or the first three are equally good.
Yes.
Goldfinger, I guess, was the film that really branched out, though. Like the first two, I didn't even see the From Russia with Love or Dr. No until I saw Goldfinger, which I think a lot of people did.
Goldfinger was I thought had some amazing things in it. For instance, I'll just show you the genesis of a few things. You know the marvelous scene when Bond is with the girl and wakes up and finds he gets knocked on the head, and then he wakes up and finds that she's been painted gold. That's never been. It was in the book.
That's right.
Later on, he's told by somebody
that she died.
That she died and had been painted gold.
Right.
Now, when I read the book, I said to myself, "My God, this has got to be a scene in the picture. You can't just talk about something like this, you know." And
like some great lines there too.
Of course, you can't not have such a thing in the picture. You see. Mr. Fleming once said to me, "You know, the pictures are so much funnier than my books," and I never said that we tried to make them funnier. Again, I say that there'll be an argument forever who's responsible for most of the humor, but it's a general contribution, and there'll be a lot of argument about many things. Harry Saltzman is a man with some fantastic ideas. He has 1 a minute, and about 1 in 10 are any good. And about 1 in 10, if you do it, you'll ruin the whole picture. And he's a man who I think wanted to be a writer himself, and secretly is jealous of writers. And in his mind, I am absolutely sure that he believes that Cubby had nothing to do with the production of the pictures, and that I had nothing to do with the writing of them, and that Harry Saltzman did it all, you know.
Well, has a showman background, so he's the type of guy who keeps coming up with acts and ideas that are not totally suited, but some might be.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this, I'll bet you that Cubby came up with many, many more ideas than Harry Saltzman
Broccoli
did.
seems to be like the father of the whole Bond thing. It's his baby now, because
of course.
When Fleming died, it was...
They bought Harry Saltzman out.
Well, Harry didn't do too well on his own, so he had to need money from what I heard.
You know, that's different. When you turn that off later, I'll tell you the real story to put it into perspective. But what else?
Goldfinger had to be entirely reworked again, because this, I guess, was one of the first books where the ending just fell flat, especially after From Russia with Love. I reread the book, and the movie is very interesting throughout the point, past the point where he's on the table. You change it to a laser beam instead of a buzzsaw, which just made sense.
Well, who's going to pay a buzzsaw in this day and age? I wrote the boys, and I told them that's Pearl White, you know. And I had seen in Time magazine a laser beam, you see. And that's one instance of where I'm saying that was the first time in any picture that they had that they had a laser beam.
Sure.
And it was because I saw it in Time and substituted it for the buzzsaw.
Buzzsaw is so weird.
Of course.
It's such a beautiful sequence there. I guess all that symbolism of being castrated, which was done very well. But like I said, the ending falls flat, and I guess
you may not realize it, but when we analyzed Goldfinger and looting Fort Knox, I suddenly decided that it was impossible to do it the way Fleming had wanted to do it, which was to back up a locomotive and transfer the gold bars to the locomotive.
Right.
Do you know why? Because it would take them 2 weeks to do it.
And that's illustrated in the film.
So, that's right. So we said, my God, what are we going to do about this? Because it just doesn't work. So that's when we came up with the particularly dirty little nuclear device that they got from the Red Chinese, and all that he wanted to do it was make it radioactive so that it would be valueless for the next 57 years. It took us 2 weeks to think of it. Why would he want to break into Fort Knox and not take anything away? And when we thought of it, then we had a scene we wrote that then between Bond and Goldfinger, in which Bond, with his lightning-like, computer-like mind, in 18 seconds, guesses what he said. It took us 2 weeks to figure out.
Oh, it's a brilliant scene where he sits there and
well,
says, "You're going to break into Fort Knox and not steal an eagle, but why?"
Well, that's right.
Colonel Ling, the Red Chinese
That's
agent.
right.
Oh, it
That's
was
right.
done
That's
very well.
That's right, and we did it because of the hole in the story. Because by that time, the Army, Navy, and the Marines would be around wondering what somebody was doing, killing everybody in Fort Knox, and so forth and so on.
The idea of the gas, spraying the gas in the airplane, is also not in the book. I think
No.
they were going to poison the water supply
right,
in the book.
yes,
And
that's
that
right.
was done very well.
That's right.
But Pussy Galore, I read this Arthur Knight thing that was just published, and it gave me a few little hints about what you were talking about. It's funny what you said about the fact that you had trouble getting Pussy Galore in there at first. And you had to drop the line, "I know, but what's your name?" I had to change that. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny,
You know how he got the permission to use that name? Not permission to. There was a marvelous publicity man that worked for him called Tom Carlyle.
Oh, yes. Is he still around?
Yes, he is. And they knew there was going to be trouble, and we were all prepared to call her Kitty Galore, which would have been no fun at all. So Tom arranged for to take Honor Blackman to a benefit of some kind or a dance. He negotiated Honor over to the prince, and he had a photograph taken of them. Is it working?
Let's see. Yeah, it's working. Okay.
And he gave an exclusive to one of the papers or a magazine. I don't know which it was. That they could publish it if they would put the caption over it that he asked them to, and they agreed to. And the caption was "Pussy and the Prince." And when that picture appeared, the whole world didn't fall apart and the sky didn't fall. So then they figured they were emboldened to go ahead with it and see what would happen. And fortunately there was a fellow named Trevelyan who was the Lord Chamberlain's man for moving pictures, and he had a great sense of humor, and he accepted it. He knew that the kids wouldn't quite know what the word pussy meant and so forth, you know.
But did he have anything to do with the censor board, or
Yes,
he just used his?
No. He was the censor.
Oh, he was the
Yeah,
censor.
Trevelyan, his name.
Oh, that's great. Because
He
without
was-
that, it would have been
That's right.
a really strange
That's right.
line.
That's right.
Thunderball was that's also one of my favorite films, but the critics didn't like it as much for a few
Neither
reasons.
did I.
You didn't like it as much either.
No, I thought that that was one thing where Terrence got a little too I don't know. He started to kid everything in what I thought then was the wrong kind of way, and he twisted the continuity out of shape, and then we had to put it back, more or less the way I had written it, and but by that time, Bonds were under such a full head of steam, and the underwater stuff was so magnificent, and Ken Adams stuff, and Thunderball up until Spy, you know, was by far the most successful picture. I think it made something like $50-60 million. Yeah, but actually, I thought that Thunderball had its limitations. I thought that some mistakes were made. For instance, the Luciana Luciana, whatever her name was, and then there was another girl that played Fiona, and I couldn't tell the two of them apart. They cast a couple of girls who looked so much alike you didn't know who was what.
Now, ironically,
you know?
the Life did a story on them, and they showed the three girls walking on the street, and the caption was they look so much alike.
Exactly. So you know, and then because when he got picked up by the Fiona, going back to the hotel, where there would have been an opportunity to see that she had red hair, and you know that she was the redhead who got off the motorcycle. Remember, earlier. He had a scarf around her head so that you couldn't see that she had red hair. A lot of small, careless things like this, you see. And I thought it was too long, the picture, but the underwater stuff was just, from a scenic design standpoint, it was just great. And again, I thought the photography was marvelous and so forth. And in that picture, Q began to emerge. Now Q began to become one of the audience's favorite characters, and he was quite serious in the first one when he, wasn't even he. It was somebody else.
Well, it was Major Boothroyd.
Major Boothroyd,
who actually is Q,
right.
but that's his real name.
That's right.
But I like that sequence because the way, even in the first Doctor No, the way he just talks about the Beretta and the Walther PPK.
But the place where the audience began to love Q was when he's explaining the Aston Martin to Bond, and he says, "Now pay attention," and Bond is bored, and he says, "But always sit here and push this because," and Bond says, "You're joking." And Q says to him, very offended, he says, "I never joke about my work, 007. Now that got one of the biggest laughs of all the laughs in the Bond pictures, and that was the tip-off that they wanted to see Bond.
Cute.
So then in Thunderball...
Was that yours?
Oh, yes. And then he showed up in Thunderball, of course, with the Bermudas and shorts and all that kind of stuff.
And he says, "Oh, no."
Yeah, that's right. As a matter of fact, I intend to overwrite Q all the time, and they keep cutting it out. The idea of going in Diamonds Are Forever, of inventing something that's going to hit a jackpot every time.
Oh, yes.
Just as a little thing like that. I thought that was cute, but I thought it was ruined because there was too much noise over it, and people didn't quite get what he was doing. But Q, I just love Q.
Well, he's almost like the Merlin the Magician of the stories. That's because right. Without him, it turned out...
Actually, I had him at the end of Spy Who Loved Me. When they weren't in the escape capsule from Stromberg's Island, they were back in the automobile, the submarine automobile, you see, down at the bottom of the ocean, and he finally brought it up, and there was Q and everybody, and Q said to him, "You do give your equipment something about an awful lot of wear and tear," James. Kind of a double entendre.
Well, the ending was interesting. I wasn't sure even what that was. That was the escape pod. I thought it looked like a giant shot glass. I thought they were going to end up on the top of the ocean, sitting in a big shot glass.
Well, there was an escape hatch that Stromberg had arranged for himself in case he had to get away.
That was just crazy. But Thunderball, there's one point in Thunderball which I always wondered. In the book, it's very clear in the beginning. He's at Shrublands recovering on yogurt and orange juice, and there's the thing where, like you did this.
Well, we put this all in about the opening where he's at a funeral with a
Chinese
girl.
That was the teaser, which has nothing to do with anything. How did that come out? I mean, it came out of nowhere.
Well, that's where you see, the point is this, that not all our teasers were directed, they're mini adventures of Bond. Sometimes they have nothing to do with the main story.
Right.
It's just, well, here's James Bond back in action. As was the opening in From Russia. Had nothing to do with the rest of the thing. He got to Miami, and they said, "You're supposed to watch a guy named Goldfinger."
Oh, Goldfinger.
You see. And what were you talking about?
In Thunderball, the funeral.
Oh, yes. So first we had a whole big scene worked out somewhere in Hong Kong in a Fantan parlor, which we later used in Man with the Golden Gun. But it would have cost a fortune to build, and there was a golden cage with a girl in it dressed up like a peacock or something like that in this cage. And Bond went into a dressing room and socked her, and it turned out to be a man. You see, that was the opening, and it was so expensive that Harry and I went to a restaurant once to see if we couldn't dope up something, and we came up with something, which was the funeral and the widow, and the way he was waiting for her when she got back, and said, "I've come to offer my condolences, my profound condolences," and whacked him. And he turned out to be a man. And then he got whacked with the poker, and then he got onto the balcony and took off in the jetpack. You see, and so forth. That was the opening.
That was a great opening.
And then he was in Shrublands, or whatever the name of the health resort was, because he'd been whacked over the back, and she was fixing him with the machine, you see. You see,
that made sense. That
Yes.
was tying it in.
Yes,
Like
that's right,
he was sucking the peacock. Could you get that on film?
He was what?
Did you say he was?
No, he was just in a this person in this golden cage. It was a beautiful girl, the
Right.
girl in the golden cage, and she was dressed up like a bird of some
Uh-huh.
kind. That's all.
And he was. What was his?
No, he just looked at it and then came to visit her in her dressing room. This
Uh-huh.
girl in this beautiful
Peacock.
outfit, and he hauled off and socked her.
Oh, socked her.
Yeah, punched her the way the guy did in the chateau. You see.
Well, I'm glad I reiterated that. I didn't see that.
No.
So well, that tied that again, like you said, the poker tied into Shrublands, which is good. But what I was going to mention was, in the book, the brother sells out to Largo and flies the plane.
It was too complicated.
Which you turn in the fact that her brother was killed and the double was replaced. I would think that would be more complicated.
No, I don't know why it was done.
It was
actually now, but it seemed to work. The brother was replaced by an agent. Yes, that's right.
Rival, actually an actor.
That's right.
And I thought that was good.
The brother was a perfectly legitimate guy who was flying in NATO Air Force. You know, one of the NATO flyers on the Atlantic Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
And
now McClory worked on that one. He all of a sudden got back into the situation and became the producer.
Oh, after we'd made 3 of them, and we were going to make on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Actually, Guy Hamilton and I started to discuss it. Then, who do you call it? Charlie Feldman had the rights to Casino Royale, and he came to them and he said, "Let's make this together," or something of the sort. No, how the hell did it go? Oh, that's right. He wanted to make Casino Royale with Sean Connery, but he wanted too much money, and they were looking around for wondering whether what they ought to do next. And then somebody says it's too. Oh yes, and then by that time Fleming's McClory's suit against Fleming had come up, and Fleming won. They proved. He proved.
Didn't McClory win?
McClory won. He proved that in that.
Thunderball.
In the earlier script, there had been this underwater cave, which McClory had discovered. Actually, you see, so it was proof that McClory that was McClory's idea, and other things too.
Oh.
And so he was given the movie rights, awarded the movie rights to Thunderball. When that happened, he and Broccoli and Saltzman got together to make the picture, and he was, I believe, a 1/3 producer of it.
I think McClory tried to make the film on his own, but couldn't get anybody to play the part.
I guess
I think
so.
he wanted Connery,
I guess
and yet
so.
they didn't have a property, so they opted for Thunderball instead. Was McClory much of an influence in the script stage at all, or?
Well, he knew a lot about
Now
underwater
you had
stuff.
written Thunderball
That's right.
years before. Was
That's
this
right.
your original draft? Of course, you had to rework it.
No, I had to rework it because don't forget, 3 pictures, two pictures had intervened, and we knew now exactly how the kind of thing that the audience wanted. So it had to be very, very thoroughly rewritten to conform with the things that we had found out would be successful. You see, basically the story was the same, though.
Do you still have your treatment of that, the original?
Oh, sure. I have them all.
You do.
Mm.
Well, that's good. At least you haven't thrown out stuff like that.
Oh no.
Now
That was a full screenplay. That one.
I'd like to see that sometime if it'd be possible. I'd like to see what the idea of the concept. A lot of the readers, like you can see in that Day of the Urstestill thing, the treatment, readers like to see how the concepts just come into being, and that would be very interesting. You didn't do the next one. They brought in somebody else to do You Only Live Twice. This was a couple of years later.
I was then under contract to Metro. They called me from Japan and asked me to come and do it, but MGM wouldn't release me. And so they went ahead and did it with Roald Dahl and Lewis Gilbert. And I also didn't do You Only Live Twice, because by that time Tom Mankiewicz had come into the picture, and he's very good. And also by that time Harry Saltzman and I were not simpatico anymore, and so as a matter of fact, on Spy Who Loved Me, he wouldn't allow Cubby to although Cubby kept suggesting me. And Cubby put me under personal contract to himself, to one of his, Warfield is the name of the company, and I began working on the script, Spy Who Loved Me.
Which one?
Spy Who Loved Me.
But Harry wasn't working on that one, though.
He was working on it, but not with me. He was working with other people. And then finally, when what's his name, Harry was bought out by United Artists, then Eon Productions took over my contract.
Harry's a pretty explosive guy. It seems like he's the kind of a lot more, I don't know if the word overbearing would be, but he's a lot more of a presence than Brocky's kind of quiet, would you say?
Oh, no.
No?
Oh, no.
No?
No. Cubby has a real power.
Uh-huh.
Harry is volatile and excitable and stuff like that, but Cubby is a hell of a producer. He works like the dickens, and he has many great ideas. He has wonderful taste in the girls and in casting and stuff like that. And a lot of people underestimated Cubby. But as I say, now I've done 17 films with him, so I know what he can do. And I always found that Harry could be helpful and so forth, but he was more disruptive than anything else.
That's what Tom seemed to say. Tom said that Harry would run into the room and show some sort of laser pistol idea in the middle of a conference and say, let's work this into the script. And I thought that was kind of hilarious, some of the ideas that came up to having an alligator in bed on the Live and Let Die project or something. It's kind of crazy. Honor Majesty's Secret Service seemed to go back to almost From Russia with Love, and the fact that it was as close to the the original novel.
Because it was good enough to be close to. You see, it was probably the best of the books as far as being material for a screenplay, and the one that we stuck to most closely. You see, excellent book. I think it's his bestseller too. I'm not sure.
I think so too. Of course, it came out a lot later, and Fleming was a lot more a well-known writer at that time when it came out, like late '60s. They twisted him around, though. I would think they should have done that first, and then You Only Live Twice, because in Secret Service, his wife is killed, and he goes to avenge himself on Blowfield.
No. In On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the next thing you see is Diamonds Are Forever. And Bond is looking for Blofeld to kill him for killing his wife.
Right.
You see. Now that was an interesting thing, and where the heck was the Diamonds? What was the one that Lazenby was in? He was in
Secret Service.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service, yes.
You wrote that entirely yourself, didn't you?
Yes. No. I think Raven had additional dialogue credit.
Who?
Simon Raven had some additional dialogue credit on that.
I don't even recall that name. You've gotten credit on most of them.
Well, of the 8 of them, I wrote 2 of them solo From Russia with Love and On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And on the others, I've had first credit, except this last one. After all, Christopher Ward has worked with Lewis Gilbert on 2 previous pictures, that Tokyo one and one called Daybreak, and they get along well, and they're friends and so forth. And every director sort of has some guy he trusts and works with and does well with. And I didn't approve of everything they did, but in general, I thought they did a marvelous job.
Oh, I was lucky when I was in London. They ran a screening of it just before they had gotten the final cut together, and I sat there in the screening room almost alone, and I felt like I was the only person in the world who would be seeing this right now. And I was really waiting for something, because I wasn't too impressed with Man with the Golden Gun. I thought that there were some tremendous problems with that, and the production just didn't. It fizzled kind of at a time when I thought they could have used a big hit. So I was very, very, considering I was starting a big project about James Bond films, I thought I was ready for a shot in the arm, and that bowled me over. I liked everything in the film. I even thought they did something with Roger, which they hadn't been able to do before.
Yes, I thought so too. I thought that for the first time he seemed to me have more menace and to be not so fatuous and flip. I did think the only thing that I just cringed at some of the jokes, which were not mine. and I thought that the stuff went on forever inside the tanker. God, if they had just taken about 5-6 minutes out. They did things twice. You see, my idea was that in Extremis they had to torpedo their way out of the thing, you see. But why they had to do 2 of those things, and especially repeat the business of defusing the atomic thing, which they had done in Goldfinger, and they had also done in Man with the Golden Gun, you see, a 3rd time. I had a feeling that neither Gilbert or Christopher Wood was too aware of the things that had been done, and there were too many repeats, which I tried desperately to avoid. Well, I had something very different in mind for the villain too. I didn't want a plain the same old Orson Welles type villain. I wanted the villain to walk in with Jaws and a young group of terrorists and take over. You see, so that when they got to the point that everything was afoot, the scheme had been afoot and all that sort of stuff, but they took over. So that when they got to the point where he said, well, how many $1 billion do you want to call the submarines back? He said, well, what are you talking about? You know, we don't want any money. We're not doing this for money. We just want to blow everything up and start over again. You see, and it was a young group, but maybe United Arts was right about this. They said that if you take a group of young terrorists, it gets political, and they just didn't want it. They just didn't want it to be political, you see.
That's one thing the Ponds have never been, is political.
That's right.
They've always edited that part out.
That's right. And it's too much. See, I had a guy from the Japanese Red Army and the Baitaminoff gang and all that kind of stuff, and I said, oh, PLO and all that stuff, they had nothing doing, you see. And they may have been right.
But you're right, though. If you compare You Only Live Twice with the other, which is Lewis's other film, they're very similar. I mean, they have that big volcano set in You Only Live Twice, and the big tanker set in this one, and they have tremendous set-piece battles.
But Lewis was nowhere around when we... See, I did a whole first script with the Guy Hamilton on The Spy Who Loved Me. And everything that's in there is basically in the Hamilton Maibaum effort.
Oh, Hamilton was the first director they had on that?
Of course. He came in and he prepared a script, and then he left to do... we wrote a script, and then we left to direct Superman.
Superman, sure.
Which he also left. And we thought for a while we'd get Peter Hunt in to direct Spy Who Loved Me, but Peter couldn't get away. So then they got in touch with Lewis, who was really kind of had done a couple of pictures which were, I thought, rather ordinary, and nothing had happened.
He's not really
he did a marvelous job on this, I think. How he put this all together, the skill, just the logistics to work them out. Of course, Cubby is great at that stuff. The logistics.
There's a whole army involved in some of these sequences. I know that when I put this whole thing together, I'm not going to be able to talk about logistics constantly. People will just be, you repeat yourself, because each film is just like similar. It's like a battle to get everything all together.
Exactly.
I'll concentrate on the films which are the most fascinating, of course. And
the what?
Well, I think in chapter by chapter, I'll highlight something different. I can't talk about the special effects all the way across because it'll be repetitious after a while. I think in Dr. No, the whole idea of the formula, the genesis of the project, and From Russia With Love, the story, Goldfinger, the effects, Thunderball, the underwater stuff, ski stuff, and all the different things would make it much more interesting.
Yes.
But I think the thing I enjoyed most about this one is the use about the girl came out pretty well. The girl character.
Yes.
Now, did you have a girl in your book?
Of course, exactly.
And you had the.
Of course, that was the entire thing. The Spy Who Loved Me. You know what this thing was about, that silly book that
sure,
that thing, and it had to start over, and they had all kinds of people. Sterling Silliphant did a treatment, and Anthony Burgess did a treatment. I don't know how many did a treatment on this thing, and nothing happened. And then when I came in, we got the story of the Russian spy, the female spy, and each being assigned and so forth and so on. And my idea was, though, I liked her very much, the girl, but I thought more of a kind of an Anushka character, you know. I thought she came over very well in the kind of never land way because she wasn't tough enough or convincing enough as a master spy, you know. But I thought she was very good, and I thought she was very beautiful, and it kind of worked. But all of that was there in my screenplay. Every bit of it. The guy, I didn't have, for instance, the music box in the opening. I had a something chime, and a wire came down with a little microphone hanging on it, and out of the microphone came chimes, and then the voice asking what's XYZ to report immediately to Moscow, and I didn't give away who XYZ was until she walked into Gogol's office. You see, it was all it's all the same. The going to Scotland and the submarine coming in. Cubby and I went up to Scotland to see what was going up there in the submarine base, what went on there, and so forth. And Guy was with us. That was all worked out. The only thing that was different was we had a lot of difficulty about determining where the locations would be. And one week it was in
Philippines.
It was in Czechoslovakia. And one week it was in Egypt, and one week it was in God knows where, in Greece, and so forth. And so after I did, you see, after Guy left, and they brought in Lewis Gilbert, then I wrote a script with Lewis, and then I left that. And then after I left, then Christopher came on. I'd been on it for about 6-7 months. And by that time then, whoever is on it last has the advantage not only of knowing exactly where the location is going to be so you can write to it, but he has the advantage of working with all the special effects people and so forth and so on that kind of are not there until you have what is pretty near the final script, you see. So those that's the advantage that the last guy that comes in.
I think that
I had nothing in there at all about the
Atlantis.
The Atlantis, no. I didn't.
That came out of Sardinia,
No.
and
because I didn't have it anything like it, although it was suggested because I thought it was just like Dr. No.
It was.
See? And I thought that, as I say, that they didn't seem to be aware of some of the things we'd done. There was a line in there that was right out of a Goldfinger, when he says, I thought it was always customary to grant the condemned man his last request. It was the very same line, exactly the same line. I all cringed. Why would they do that?
When was that?
It was, she had a gun on him in the capsule.
Oh, sure, the last scene
That's
in the
right,
movie.
yeah.
And even
the very same line.
That's true, and they've... I must admit that their effects, though, like their car chase, was done very well.
Oh, it was marvelous.
That was, I mean, even the helicopter.
Well, it wasn't any better than Guys in
Goldfinger.
In Diamonds.
In Diamonds.
That was
The Diamonds.
thing.
The Diamonds. Now that was a great scene. I like none of that. Of course.
Actually, the scene in Man with the Golden Gun, where the car jumped over the thing, was marvelous, but it was not shot exactly right because everybody thought it was a model or something. They paid $200,000 to do that.
And they ruined it with that ridiculous music.
Furthermore, I thought it was so good that when he got onto the other side, he saw that the fellow had crossed over again. So he turned around, went back, and did it the other way. You see, I thought at least they ought to. No.
They didn't shoot enough camera angles on the thing. I don't think.
I don't know what happened.
It didn't
quite come off. It always got applause and everything.
Oh,
but
sure.
Not the way we thought it would.
My big gripe with Man with the Golden Gun was there was too much stuff with the sheriff, from Live and Let Die.
Well, I think that guy kind of overdid. I never expected. And I must say that I was all for it, bringing the sheriff back and using him. But I didn't think he would be done so heavy-handedly, you see. And it sort of defeated itself. Of course, I think that was pretty marvelous in Spy Who Loved Me. And I'm sure that was Cubby's. Of course, Cubby in The Spy Who... in Man with the Golden Gun always wanted just some... little guy, just a fella, seeing this car take off and kind of looking and making some remark about it. you see, or rather being in the car when he steals it, you see, and not somebody that you've seen before. You know, it was just a guy who was happily bug-eyed, but what was happening to him? He was there to buy a car.
That's what I heard. That was this little Japanese guy was buying a car.
That was Cody. That's right. But then you see, the idea of what's his name came up, and he was so Clifford James, and he was so funny, and the other thing,
and so popular.
Yeah, that I was all for it, and they wanted Clifford James to as just a shot to be a tourist there, and he wouldn't come for that. So we got him by augmenting the part and sticking him in the car. You see,
which I don't think was as effective.
So I agree, Cubby was right on that. And I'm sure it was his idea when the car hits the peasant's cottage in Spy, and
well, even now when that's shocking enough. But then when Jaws walks out, he says, "Oh my God!"
Right. Jaws was in my script.
Was in your?
Of course, all of it was.
So you came up with the idea of having a guy named Jaws.
I don't know. I don't know whether it was mine or Cubs or somebody or guys or who's.
But
it was long before Lewis Gilbert came in.
It was in your first script.
Oh, of course. And we had the whole scene on the train, and only we had the way they did it was better. That she opened up the closet and there he was, but the way we did it, she was asleep in her bunk, and he came in and. He kneeled down beside her, and he bit, and you heard that squish, and then the lights went on, and there was Bond from the next room with a gun on him. And what they'd done is, there had been a short scene in the dining car. They'd taken a melon and put a wig on it, and put it on her pillow, you see. And so you saw Jaws with kind of red juice on his face, and you didn't know there was that, you see. So they changed that to the way they did it. I thought it was better the way they did it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it opens with that was done very well. The fact that they never could kill him. He just kept on coming back, and I thought that was the best henchman they've had since Odd Job.
Yes.
They've had a lot of iffy henchmen. There was no henchman really in Thunderball except for that one guy Vargas who got spirited against the wall.
There wasn't any.
I think there was a certain problem in Thunderball where the characters weren't as vivid. I think a lot of the critics said that even the guy who played Largo was kind of...
he was very bad. Adolfo Cho. He has not got the stature. But when you say the best of all the villains has undoubtedly been Goldfinger.
Gert Frobe.
He was absolutely an inspiration. First of all, because nobody had known him. He was a German actor, you see. And you didn't know which way he was going to go. And he was simply magnificent.
I heard he was revoiced or resynced for that entire film. That wasn't really his voice. I guess that was kind of surprising, because I couldn't picture him anywhere else. And I was also surprised to read an article about the fact that Fleming based him on a real person. There was a guy down in Florida, a millionaire, who was kind of just built like that, and it was the inspiration for Goldfinger.